Hi, I'm Steve. You can call me Steve. Last time I talked about various types of radiation. This week I'm going to carry on and talk about radiation adjacent things. I've mentioned how radiation is energy carried by photons moving in a straight line. There are a couple of forms that are carried by tiny particles of matter moving in a straight line. Alpha and beta. Alpha radiation is simply two protons and two neutrons bound into a clump, and beta is an electron. I described these at the end of the primer episode if you want to go double check. Gamma is something we met last time and is a photon. Again, the harmfulness of radiation is determined by how much energy it has. These types have more energy the further into the Greek alphabet you get. Alpha is least, then beta, then gamma has the most energy. Your clothes will protect you from alpha radiation unless it gets into your body somehow. The only way you're likely to encounter alpha radiation in a way that could harm you is from radon gas seeping into your basement. I won't touch much on beta radiation because it's not really something that's in the public consciousness or something you're likely to come into contact with. Gamma radiation, however, is used to kill pathogens in meat that might otherwise infect consumers. This also stops the meat from going bad because the microbes that would otherwise cause it to rot are now dead. What it doesn't do is make the meat radioactive. Radiation carried by energy is transient. Once the photon hits something, the energy it carries is absorbed or dispersed or otherwise scattered. It causes its damage and then it's done. In the case of our food supply, that damage is to remove all the things that could make you sick. You will not become a giant green rage monster if you eat irradiated beef. There is a little bit of chemistry that happens that could be bad, but if you're throwing the meat on the barbecue, you're creating much more of that chemistry. Okay, now for the big one, nuclear power. When I say that, you're probably thinking of Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island, which were legitimately bad. However, both of those incidents were due to poor design, poor regulation, and poor operations. What they prove is that neither unbridled capitalism or unbridled communism can be trusted to safely operate nuclear plants. Even Fukushima was poorly designed and sited. The issue isn't that it was hit by a tsunami. The issue is that someone thought it was a good idea to build it in a place where it could get hit by a tsunami. Once again, there's a difference between fear and healthy respect. Nuclear energy reliably delivers enormous amounts of energy compared to other sources, and doesn't belch climate-changing CO2 or drown vast areas of land behind dams. It does require significant and admittedly expensive safety precautions. You can't skimp on this simply because the owner of the plant wants a bigger yacht. If we're going to prevent climate change from getting worse than it already is, we cannot ignore the potential of nuclear power. We just have to learn from the mistakes of the past and not repeat them. There is the issue of cost, though. The economics of nuclear power are complicated and far beyond my ability to speak intelligently about, so I will simply note them and move on. I know I said the only way some forms of radiation can harm you is for them to get inside your body, but there are some cases where you have to do just that. There are many medical uses of radioisotopes or radionuclides, which are atoms that undergo radioactive decay and release one of the types of radiation I mentioned earlier. Broadly speaking, they can be used to find out what's wrong with you or help deal with what's wrong with you. Radioimaging involves taking a radionuclide and sticking it to a molecule that particularly likes hanging out in whatever organ or tissue it is you want to examine. Bones, the thyroid, the heart, whatever. Then you wait for it to go hang out in that organ and do a 3-dimensional scan of the beta or gamma rays coming off it to see where it's concentrated. If the pattern doesn't look like what you expect, that's an indication that something's wrong and can tell you a lot about what exactly is wrong. I didn't mention this when I talked about gamma rays last video, but they can be used to kill cancer cells. Several beams of low-intensity gammas are focused so that they intersect inside the tumor, and their combined intensity is enough to kill whatever cells are in the region where they overlap, but not the healthy tissue the beams pass through on the way there. They typically use more than 2 beams, but I've only got 2 hands. Radionuclide therapy is another way of destroying cancer cells. Rather than using beams of radiation, a radionuclide is attached to a molecule that prefers to associate itself with the organ where the tumor is located. It either binds to the surface or gets sucked into the middle. Once there, it releases its decay energy and damages the tumor. But wait, I've just spent 3 videos talking about how radiation inside your body is a bad thing. Again, it's all about dose. Even the most intense diagnostic scan, so the thing trying to find out what's wrong with you, is less than the yearly workplace dose permitted in the US. It's a calculated risk with a very low chance of causing additional cancer. In cancer treatment, the dose is much higher because the intention is to cause damage to the tumor. However, those doses are delivered specifically to the organ being treated rather than spread throughout the body. Different organs have different radiation tolerances, and a good treatment plan will take this into account when deciding how strong a dose to administer. The risk of radiation damage is weighed against the risk of continuing to have cancer. The onset period for this new low-risk cancer is anywhere from 7 to 20 years, which are years you wouldn't have without the treatment. Cancer appearing 2 to 4 years after treatment is almost certainly a recurrence of the original cancer, or a coincidence. It's not due to the radiation. Radiotherapy is not a pleasant process, and recovery from the treatment takes a while. But cancer itself is not pleasant, and this is one of the best ways we have of fighting it. There are non-medical uses of isotopes as well. Americium is something that's found in smoke alarms as part of the detection system. A tiny chunk of this radioactive metal sends small amounts of alpha particles between 2 charged metal plates to complete an electrical circuit. If smoke gets between the plates and disrupts that, the detector notices that the circuit is broken and starts shrieking. It also notices if you've left something on the stove and forgotten it, or had a really hot shower and let the steam escape when you open the door. Remember, alpha particles have the lowest penetrating power of the radiations. They have the lowest energy. As long as you leave your smoke detector as is and don't futz with it, you'll be fine. It won't harm you. I do need to rant here. Radiation can be used for health applications. I've just described some of them, but only under carefully controlled conditions under the supervision of a healthcare professional. That doesn't mean you should act carelessly on your own initiative. There's a health trend where people go into mines with high radon content and soak up the radiation, and by soak up I mean breathe in. I don't know what they think they're getting out of it, but I would predict lung cancer. These are the same people who freak out about power lines or cell phones, merely exposing themselves to a legitimate health threat. I don't care if it's natural radon. The distinction between natural and artificial is entirely artificial. Radon will not improve your health. I don't care what the snake oil peddlers told you. That concludes my tour of radiation. It's not completely harmless, and it's not completely harmful. As always, it requires a measured, case-by-case approach. Remember, the amount of harm it can cause depends on the amount of energy it carries. Some hazards can be managed, but the highest ones should be left to competent professionals. Thanks for watching. I've been Steve.